What's up, guys? Chris Brown, Chain Stasis Wellness, coming at you from Train Boston with another weekly nutrition tip. This week's nutrition tip is about not letting looking at the smaller picture get in the way of the big picture. And I'm speaking, of course, in terms of your wellness and nutritional well-being. So what people do when they think of being healthier, or in many cases just being leaner and looking better, but also in feeling better, is they find these little nuanced things that they focus on and latch onto. And often it's because somebody told them, hey, it worked for me. Or they see a model on a magazine or in a YouTube video with their shirt off or wearing a tight little outfit telling them that this is the way, this is the best way. It almost becomes dogmatic, and people buy into dogma. They love that almost religious experience of, if you follow this rule, if you find the way, this will be your savior and it will deliver you into wellness and looking great and feeling great. Now, there is a lot of truth to this, as in a little bit of truth in every lie always helps sell that lie. Well, they aren't really lying, but they're a little bit misleading. And they're getting you to focus on small things while losing sight of the overall picture. The overall picture is those chain links that form your wellness. So if you're trying to put your cart before the horses, for instance, and focus on the smaller things at the end of what you're doing, you're going to lose sight of the first most important things, and you're really not going to get where you want to be. So let's go through a few of those things that people tend to do, and we'll talk about why they might be good and why they might not be good, and go through at the end as to what this all means put together. So these are in no particular order, and I'm not really ranking them so much as just bringing them to your attention so you can I can kind of help you think through them on your own. Okay. So avoiding nightshades, that's a big thing that TB12 Tom Brady has brought to the limelight. He wrote a book. He talks about his experiences. Of course, he's beautiful. He's successful. He's got a gorgeous wife and a beautiful family. So everyone wants to be like Tom Brady, or they hate him. One or the other, nowhere in between. But anyways, he tells people he doesn't eat nightshades, right? Now, what are nightshades? Well, simply put, they are a specific type of vegetables or things that grow from the earth that are high in something called solanine. I may be saying that wrong, so excuse me. But solanine is something that can be toxic in high amounts. It's contained in vegetables like eggplants, tomatoes, cayenne peppers, paprika, and even white potatoes. This solanine, it can actually be bad for you if you eat a ton of it, if you have a ton of raw veggies, and you don't eat anything else. However, our body is actually really good at dealing with this, especially in the cooked down vegetables. And the problem with avoiding these things altogether is that when we avoid these things, we're avoiding a lot of healthy type foods. So let's look at this and be real. Most people, they're not eating enough vegetables in general. There's a lot of benefits from these vegetables that come along with the solanine, the small amounts often in cases. There's high in fiber, there's B vitamins, there's vitamin C, there's other antioxidants. There's so many reasons why you should eat these foods that they really outweigh the potential downside. None of the science is really high on supporting avoiding nightshades. Now, as with most things, there are some people that should avoid them for other medical reasons. So if your doctor tells you so, or if your registered dietitian tells you this is actually harmful to you specifically, then heed their advice. But otherwise, we probably don't need to be focusing on such a small food group that could potentially be really good for you. Another thing people focus on that probably doesn't really matter that much, and it's also in the limelight right now, is eating based on your pH, or your acidity versus alkalinity. Now, certain foods, they're higher in pH, means they're more acidic, or they're lower in pH, meaning more alkaline. And what these books and these magazines are trying to say is that we're too acidic. We're too low on the pH scale. Now, our body likes to hover around 7.2, 7.3 pH, but that's not everywhere in our body. Our stomach is much more acidic. Of course, it needs to break things down with hydrochloric acid. All parts of our body are going to differ based on a lot of different factors we're not going to get into today. So kind of trying to get your food to match your body is a silly way of looking at things, I think. Of course, when we're eating bad foods, they cause things like acid reflux. Most people know that. If you're eating fried chicken and you have a GERD problem, it's not going to feel good. generally speaking, if you're eating processed food, it's not going to feel good if you have those issues. It's going to feel more acidic, right? Your body's not happy with it. So instead of worrying about the fact that meats and eggs and other foods can have a more acidic effect on you, you should be worried about how can I temper this with vegetables, right? How can I stop eating processed foods so I can still have these other acidic foods? The foods are not inherently bad. In many cases, they're really, really good for you. But the fact of the matter is we're not eating a balanced diet. And it's generally coming back to that. So if we just focus on eating a balanced diet, maybe we wouldn't have a problem with the pH of our food. In this case, probably the negatives outweigh the positives, but there's always good to everything. Third thing, a lot of people come to me all the time. Chris, what supplements should I take? Well, I'll ask them, what's your goal? And then we usually get to what their goal is, and it could be a lot of things. But eventually, usually some people, they want to look better and they want fat burners. Fat burners are a huge one. So why do they want fat burners when they don't have their nutrition in line? I always ask them that. Like, what are you going to get from this that you won't get from eating better? Eating less calories maybe, eating healthier foods? Well, they're usually looking for a quick fix. So how do these things offer a quick fix? Well, they have the allure of the model on the cover that's ripped or shredded. It looks great, of course. They have cool names like Hydroxycut or Ripped Fuel. They sound cool and badass, right? But they really don't do all that much for you. They mostly have B vitamins, which are supposed to help your metabolism. Great. Get that from real food if you want. Caffeine. Okay, drink your coffee. Fine. It's good for you. Root extracts like yohimbe, yerba mate, that kind of thing. Cayenne powder. Yeah, they can increase your metabolism. Great. You can drink tea. Cool. Whatever. And sometimes they have ephedrine, which, it's probably not good for a lot of people, especially if you have heart issues, but not the devil like a lot of people make it out to be. But at the end of the day, it's just increasing it by maybe 5 to 10%. If you're not working out properly and you're not eating a well-balanced diet, you're probably missing out on all these other things anyways. So taking these things is just going to make you feel kind of like anxious and jittery, and it may make you actually run out of breath faster when you work out because your heart's pounding and racing. Not a great feeling. But the same thing can go for other supplements like creatine, trying to make you stronger. Protein powder, maybe you should just eat more protein in general. I'm not saying it's bad for you. I'm saying, why are we focusing on the supplement when we don't have the base? So just think about that. The next thing, counting calories, or what people like to say, if it fits your macros, right? If your macronutrients are right, what we prescribed you, it doesn't matter what you eat. You're still going to get your result. Now, that's a little bit of a myopic way of looking at things. You can lose body weight if you have the right amount of calories, the right amount of macronutrients, protein, carb, and fat. Yeah, that's true. But that doesn't mean you're going to be losing all body fat. It doesn't mean you're going to be maintaining all your muscle mass. It doesn't mean that your metabolism is going to work properly. Your thyroid's going to function properly. You're going to sleep well. All the things, all the micronutrients, minutia of your diet and your lifestyle are going to impact this way more than just the amount of macronutrients you have. And this kind of leads to a bigger problem with our dietary recommendations. The FDA allows food labels to be off as much as 20%, which is better than it used to be, but still really bad. And one study showed that in general, they usually underestimate calories, and specifically in carbohydrates, which in a lot of processed foods is just processed starches, which we shouldn't be eating anyways, but people do. Let's be real. All right. So those two things together show you why counting calories probably is just going to lead to neuroticism, which leads to my next one, weighing foods. Now, certain people, physique athletes, bikini models, bodybuilders, those kind of people, even fighters, people who have weight classes, they may need to do this once in a while. And it's a good learning tool. So you can see, this is what one portion looks like. Okay, I get it. But if you keep doing that forever, you're just going to be someone who obsesses and thinks that you cannot get your results without weighing your food later. It's a slippery slope from these kind of things to eating disorders, bulimia, anorexia nervosa, even body dysmorphia. Not something you probably want to do if you don't have to do it. Again, if you're focusing on feeling full and eating whole foods, you're typically going to be full before you overeat. Nobody said, hey, oh man, I ate too much broccoli. Oh man, I just, this basic steak, oh, I just ate too much of it. Nobody's like, man, I got fat from that. It's absolutely not true. It's the starchy things like the potato gratin and all that stuff they have with it on the side. That's what's really killing you. And that leads me to counting calories burned from workouts. Now, Fitbits, the Whoop, all those different Nike and whatever products you wear around your wrist, they tell you how many steps you've taken, how they have an accelerometer on them. They tell you how many calories you've burned. They give you all this data that just it tends to be overwhelming and probably doesn't really matter that much. People have been healthy and very fit long before these things came around. So while it's cool to have these metrics, especially for coaches like myself, it's probably counting calories that you're burning from your workout. It's probably not telling you whether you had a good workout or not. Not as much as your metrics from how much weight you moved, how many meters you moved, how many calories you burned via like watts or energy used, power, right? We probably don't need to know that, and we definitely don't need to linger on it. So counting calories burned from workout, it can also lead to this thought of, I did this so I can eat whatever I want. And this is why I work out. It's just not a good way of thinking. You should try to work out to feel better, not to eat more junk. Eating more junk is going to make you feel bad. And in turn, it's going to make you work harder. And it leads to this mentality of punishment versus rewards for exercise. This is bad. And please, please, please don't teach this to your kids. It's a really destructive mentality that leads to people either hating working out, they hate the gym, they hate people who are fit or people who are overweight, they hate that. And we don't want to lead to these biases for themselves or to others. It's just really not healthy mentally. Another thing is people restrict their window of eating too much. I often hear like, I don't eat after 8, or I don't eat carbs after 8, or I'm doing IF, intermittent fasting, and I'm not eating for 16 hours in a row. And it's just arbitrary times these people make up. While some of this has some merit to it, intermittent fasting can work really well, especially for certain lifestyles. It really matters more like, when do you wake up? When do you work out? When do you sleep? And how do you feel? A lot of times, these fasting windows can lead to people not understanding what hunger feels like. And they're either driven by a bad metabolism or they're driven by feelings of appetite. They just eat based on how they feel emotionally, and they don't get used to feeling their body being hungry. This can even lead to a metabolism almost shutting down. A lot of times when people tell me, I'm just not hungry for breakfast, it means they've never consistently had breakfast. And their metabolism's never ramped up really heavily. So they just don't understand, oh, that discomfort, that's hunger. Oh yeah, you should probably eat. And guess what? You should have that meal ready ahead of time so you don't just eat those Cheez-Its in your closet. So don't try to arbitrarily restrict the times you eat so much as you maybe don't want to eat right before bed because that might disrupt your sleep. Or maybe I want to eat after my workouts because I need fuel to recover from. Try to change your way of thinking about that. And that leads to another thing. This is a real big problem, I think. Most people in the nutrition world will say this. Going on cleanses and avoiding whole food groups. Stop it. Please stop it. You do not cleanse or detoxify your body through avoiding a big thing and just drinking water with maple syrup. You just don't do that. All right? Your kidney and your livers, they detoxify your body. That's how you process things. You would die if these things didn't do their job. Literally, you'd be dead right now. All right? You can't even drink carbonated soda without processing it. You would literally die from blood pH change. So drinking a lemonade with maple syrup and cayenne pepper for like a few days in a row, what is that doing for you? Well, you don't have protein for one. We need protein for so many things in our life. But two, you're just having raw sugar and water. Well, it's great that you're having a lot of water. Cool. That's awesome. And honestly, pure fasting for 24 hours, it can help your gut heal. That being said, what are the benefits we're getting out of it other than those potentials? Like, you shouldn't be working out when you're fasted, that's for sure. You might be getting dehydrated actually because you're probably not drinking quite enough water, even though you're having these mixed drinks ahead of time. And on top of that, you're just getting your blood sugar levels used to these spikes in sugar without tempering it with vegetables and proteins. this can also lead to these eating disorders. It's very similar to being anorexic, to thinking that if I eat less, I'm going to look better. That's not a good way of looking at things. You are not cleansing your body or detoxifying your body through these cleanses. And the same can go for just avoiding protein altogether, avoiding carbs altogether, avoiding fat altogether. These food groups are all important. The only reason you should avoid them is if your doctor tells you maybe you have celiac disease or your kidneys can't handle a load of protein. Listen to your doctor for sure, but don't just buy into these things in magazines. They're actually doing you harm, and you are not losing body fat or improving your performance or looks. Okay? And the last thing, these kind of all go together. Having cheat meals or cheat days. This is totally something from bodybuilding or bikini modeling. Just get out of that mentality of cheat. It's kind of like saying this food's good for you, this food's bad for you, or saying I'm eating to work out, or I'm eating as punishment. I want to work out more so I can eat more. This is just a bad mindset to have. It treats food as evil, or like foods that are enjoyable mentally as a bad thing. Like you really shouldn't enjoy that food. It's bad for you. This is really damaging potentially, and again leads to eating disorders often. The theory behind cheat meals, though, is that you have this pressure valve release by having a cheat meal that allows you to get through the next week or two without eating bad or unclean foods. All right. But in practice, it leads to that mentally good versus bad, or binge eating versus eating normally. And you can do way more damage through eating really great for a month and eating really poorly for a month, back and forth for long periods of your life through so many different ways, than you can do positive through it. All right. So please stay away from that. Even try to not use that mentality. Okay. At the end of the day, though, all these things, they may produce a similar effect to what people claim to want: weight loss and maybe some improved biological health markers. But usually the benefits from these are fairly short term. And they tend to have some pretty big downsides as well, especially in the long term. You may not see it now, but you will see it later. There is some connection they all have, however. They usually bring us back to the main tenets of nutrition, right? If we eat less processed foods, we have a good variety of foods, including vegetables and fruits, and we have adequate protein, and move or exercise regularly for feeling well. That will make you get all these goals and feel better in general. You'll be more well. Don't make life so complicated. Keep the big picture in mind. Your brain will thank you, and so will your body. All right, that's all I have for you guys this week. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments below. And until next time, be well. Thank you.